Well, Robert, 30 years here at Tomintoul,
Correct.
and many years before that, before coming here as manager.
Yeah, this year is my 46th year in the,
Wow.
in the industry. Started at the Glenlivet in 1974. I'd been there as a student for 2 years previously, but my parents wanted me to get a proper job, so I moved to Edinburgh for a couple of years.
Then your father, grandfather, and great-grandfather all worked at Glenlivet Distillery, I
Yeah,
believe.
the family heritage has gone back to crofting in 1764. Was as far back as we can go, but I can only go as far back as my great-grandfather, and the only way that I knew that, apart from the family, my own family telling me that, was when in 1974 there was the 150th anniversary of the Glenlivet.
Yeah.
And we got a nice book by Michael Brander.
Yes, yeah.
And in the book was where Captain Smith Grant had signed to Peter and now Robert, 4th generation. So I knew that's the only provenance I've got that.
So your people came from the Glenlivet area.
Yeah, my forebears had a little croft on the side of Benrinnes called Achfad, and they moved in there about the mid 1800s. Before that, they were down in Glenrinnes. So they've always been within this area.
Yeah. I want to talk about Tomintoul, because this was originally, understandably, built as a distillery to supply fillings for the founders' blends.
Yes.
And as I understand, it was first bottled or promoted in a small way as a single malt in 1990.
Oh, it was done before that. The company in 1973, the Tomintoul Distillery Company Limited, as it was called at that time, were taken over by White & Mackay. And White & Mackay wanted Tomintoul because we always produced a spirit for blending. That was and we used to exchange with many big companies who used our spirit, matured Tomintoul in their.
But but White & Mackay had Tamnavulin?
Not at that time, no. All White & Mackay had at that time, before they took over Tomintoul, all they had was Dalmore.
And was that used? That would be traded for blending.
And that was traded for blending as well. It wasn't the single malt wasn't to the fore it is today. And then Tomintoul by that time had bought Fettercairn.
Ah, yes.
And then the Tomintoul and Fettercairn got sold off to White & Mackay in 1973. So, but still, we were always used for blending. Fast forward now to I started here in 1990. When you came to 1994, White & Mackay bought Invergordon. Slump in the market, we shut 3 distilleries. But we were still used by the White & Mackay company because Invergordon had their grain distillery and additional brands. And mainly own label brands.
Yeah.
So what they wanted for own label brands was quality spirit at a reasonable price. And they could get that from Tomintoul. The thing I'm quite proud about the Tomintoul, especially the 16. The 16-year-old is my favourite. I like my whiskies to be light, mellow, easy drinking. Not. We do peated whiskies as well.
You don't like the peat whiskey?
They're not my.
You're a space side. They're
not my go-to whiskey. It depends on the ambience. If I'm sitting in the island of Islay with a peated whiskey, then I'll be quite happy. But no, they're not my go-to whiskies. But the good thing that I like about the 16 is that we've developed, leaps and bounds since we first started doing that. We've won awards for the sherry finishes, the port finish. We've won awards for the single cask bottlings and the older bottlings. But we still win awards for the 16.
So you spent 10 years here under the ownership of White & Mackay.
Yeah. It remained much the same until my first meeting with
the owners of Angus Dundee.
The owners of Angus Dundee. So I'd been in the business for many years, and the company had grown to a size that why should they buy from other companies? Why could they not make their own? So they looked for a distillery. So he came into the distillery, gave him the normal tour, took him up to the mash house, and he said, "I'm buying Tomintoul." And I said, no, it's Tomintoul and it's for sale. Tomintoul's not for sale. He said, "I'm buying Tomintoul." And I said, "Well, no, I don't think you are. It's not for sale." He says, "Everything's for sale." So from saying tough, it's not for sale, all of a sudden he'd sold off Tomintoul. And to be honest, I'm not decrying White and Mackay. I had a really good time in my days at White and Mackay, but working for the family company I would recommend everybody work for a family company.
Can you think of any highlights in the first 30 years?
The first 30 years, yes. Good point.
Since you've been here in Tomintoul.
Highlights. So many. A lot of changes. I'm only the third custodian of Tomintoul.
I know.
And over the years, I think what I'm proud of is the fact that the distillery employs local people.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of local people from the village. Some have been with me. One guy had been over 40 years here.
Yeah.
Some of them had been here and their father was employed beforehand. So
How many now?
I'm up to, as of next month, I have 28 people here.
Started with 11, I think.
We started with 11 in 1965. By the time Angus Dundee took us over, it was 13, including me. But the company has expanded so much in the last 20 years out of the 30 that we're now up to, I've just taken on someone else who's starting in November.
That's astonishing.
Going back over the 30 years, apart from the increasing in the process and the work in the warehousing, the blending centre we've built, additional warehousing we've built, we've added to the fabric of the distillery. I think it's I think I touched on it earlier. We're very lucky because over the last 5 to 10 years, as a single malt has been developed and all the range of single malts have been developed, we've won many awards for the 16-year-old and for all the other expressions. One of the key things for me was I've been able to travel to different countries. I think I met you in South Africa many years ago, when we were one of the first ones. I went to Whisky Live, and I was the only. Well, there was two people, one from Angus Dundee, one from another company. We were the only two distillers at Whisky Live. All the rest were, agency people or salespeople. We were the only two distillers. But what made it a bit proud for me was I was away in the other hemisphere pouring Tomintoul that was made by people that I knew where they stayed in the village. When I'm drinking something, because of my length of time in the industry, if I'm drinking something, I'm thinking about, well, that was a 16-year-old. What were we doing 16 years ago? Who was working at Tomintoul 16 years ago? Sadly, some of my old colleagues over the last 30 years, the older colleagues, have passed on. And that's sad because they're not getting to see the fruits of their endeavour.
So hard work,
so that's one way of looking at it. And I'm not really one for, the 30-year-old that we're going to taste in a minute, getting accolades doesn't really sit well with me because I'm only sort of custodian of it's the guys out there. I'm not pushing casks. I'm not working at 3 a.m. to make sure that the spirit cut is right. I'm relying on these guys to do it. So you've got to have the respect for the people, not just Tomintoul, obviously, which I'm with, but anybody in the whisky industry. There's a lot more to it than
absolutely
people realise. So, yeah, lots of highlights in 30 years. Angus Dundee taking us over 20 years ago. Who knows what would have happened if they hadn't taken us over? I don't know. I think I've been very lucky.